In 1908, deep beneath the sun-baked ruins of a forgotten palace on the island of Crete, a group of archaeologists made a discovery that would haunt the world of history for over a century. They were excavating the ancient city of Phaistos, once a vibrant center of the mysterious Minoan civilization. The dig was going as expected: crumbling walls, broken pottery, fragments of a world long gone. But then they found it. A disc, just a clay disc, roughly 16 centimeters across, flat, circular, and at first glance nothing extraordinary until they turned it over. Both sides were covered in strange symbols, not scratched, not painted, but carefully stamped into soft clay, arranged in a perfect spiral from the outer edge inward, as if it were a message slowly drawing you into its center. There were 241 individual symbols in total, grouped into short sequences, 45 unique characters. Some looked like people, others resembled birds, fish, tools, plants, or abstract shapes that defied interpretation, and none of them matched any known language on Earth. Not linear A, not linear B, not Egyptian, not Sumerian, not Phoenician, not even a distant cousin to anything. It was as if someone had invented an entirely new symbolic system just for this one object. Linguists tried to decode it. Cryptographers analyzed its frequency and repetition. Historians searched for similar inscriptions across the Mediterranean. Nothing. Even computers failed. The disc refused to speak, and that silence only made it louder. What was this object meant to be? A prayer, a proclamation, a spell, a story? Theories began to multiply. Some believed it was a hymn or ritual incantation, perhaps meant to be read aloud in a spiral, like a mantra moving inward toward divine knowledge. Others argued it could be a kind of celestial calendar, with the symbols marking phases of the moon or agricultural cycles. Still others claimed it was simply art, a decorative piece, a demonstration of craftsmanship. But if it were mere art, why go through the trouble of creating a whole language? Why the precision? Why the symmetry? And why has nothing like it ever been found again? It is the only one of its kind. No duplicates, no partial copies, no other artifact that even comes close. This raises an even deeper question. If it was important enough to be made with such care, why was it buried and forgotten? Was it lost in a disaster? Was it hidden on purpose? Was it meant to be found centuries later by us? Some propose that the disc came not from the Minoans, but from a culture even older, a people we have no record of, a civilization that left behind only this artifact as a whisper in the dark. And then there are those who suggest something even more radical, that it was designed to be undecipherable, not by accident, but by intent. A code not meant to be broken, a puzzle meant to remain whole, a challenge from the past to the future. Today, the Phaistos Disc sits behind glass in the Heraklion Archaeological Museum in Crete. Tourists lean in. Scholars take notes, theories come and go, but the disc remains silent, unchanging, untouched by time. It stares back at us with its spiral of symbols, asking a question without words. What if we're not meant to understand everything? What if the very presence of mystery is its own kind of truth? Maybe the disc is not something to be solved. Maybe it's something to be remembered, a message from an age we never knew, a message that says, there is more to this world than you know. And maybe there always has been. Sometimes the strangest discoveries come from the most ordinary places. A quiet creek, a forgotten stone, and a moment of curiosity that opens the door to an impossible question. In 1936, near the small town of London, Texas, a couple named Max and Emma Hahn were hiking along Red Creek. The Texas sun was hot, the water shimmered, and then they saw it. A strange rock sitting near the edge of the stream. It wasn't remarkable except for one detail. A piece of weathered wood was sticking out from inside the stone. They picked it up and took it home. For years, it sat on a shelf, nothing more than a curiosity, until their son, years later, cracked it open. And inside was a hammer, a perfectly formed iron hammer with a wooden handle encased entirely within what appeared to be solid rock. And that's where the mystery begins, because the hammer wasn't ancient. It looked like something from the 1800s, a 19th century miner's hammer to be precise, the kind used by laborers across America. But the rock around it, that was something else entirely. According to geologists, the surrounding limestone was at least 100 million years old. Some claimed even older. So the question echoed across both science and faith. How does a man-made object end up inside ancient stone? The implications were staggering. Was it evidence of time travel, proof of a prehistoric civilization, a remnant from a forgotten era before the flood, or simply a misunderstanding? As news spread, scientists and believers collided. On one side were geologists who insisted that minerals can sometimes form concretions, natural stone-like shells, around modern objects in just decades or centuries. According to this view, the hammer wasn't ancient. It had simply been dropped, left behind. And over time, minerals from water flowing through the area hardened around it, slowly turning mud into rock. A fascinating process, but not a miracle. On the other side were those who refused to accept such an easy answer, because the deeper they looked, the stranger things became. The iron head of the hammer was nearly pure, over 96%, with small traces of chlorine and sulfur. A composition that resisted rust for decades, even centuries. The wooden handle, partially petrified, still held its shape. And yet, there was no rust, no erosion, just silence. Some even claimed that the hammer had been tested at a private lab and that its alloy didn't match any known industrial process. But no official records were ever released, no peer-reviewed study, only whispers and questions. To make things worse or more intriguing, the current owners of the hammer refused to allow carbon dating on the wood. Why? What were they protecting? Or hiding? Today, the hammer is on display at a small museum in Texas. A modest artifact that holds within it an enormous debate. Is it a geological curiosity or something far more profound? We may never know. Because unlike other artifacts, the hammer wasn't found at a proper archaeological dig. No photos of its discovery, no detailed excavation report, just a family walk by a stream, a cracked rock, and a question too big for its size. If it truly is ancient, It could change everything we think we know about human history. If it's not, it still serves as a reminder that sometimes the past doesn't come to us through pyramids or scrolls. Sometimes it hides inside a rock, waiting, not to be explained, but to be wondered. And perhaps that wonder is more important than the answer itself. High in the Peruvian Andes, where the air is thin and the mountains stretch toward the heavens, a mystery stands carved in stone. Sacsayhuaman, a fortress, a temple, a riddle in the shape of a wall. Just outside the ancient capital of Cusco, massive stones rise from the earth in zigzagging lines, some weighing over 200 tons, larger than a locomotive, taller than a two-story house, fitted together so precisely that not even a sheet of paper can slide between them. No mortar, no gaps, no room for error. The Spanish conquistadors who first saw these walls in the 1500s were stunned. They called them the work of demons, because no human, no matter how clever, could have done this. At least that's what they believed. But someone did, and we still don't know how. Mainstream archaeologists say the Inca built it in the 15th century under the rule of Emperor Pachacuti, with no wheels, no iron tools, no written instructions, no beasts of burden capable of carrying such weight. So how did they move these giants? From quarries miles away, across mountains, through dense forest, and how did they shape them? Each stone carved with interlocking edges, sloped joints, and subtle curves fitting like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle. Some theorize they used hammer stones and endless human labor. Others suggest the stones were softened using unknown chemicals, or maybe melted. Yes, melted. Because just a few miles away, at a site called Tambo Mache, stones appear to have flowed like wax, as if exposed to heat no ancient forge could produce. And if that's true, then what kind of technology are we talking about? Something we've forgotten, or something not of this world? Some believe Sacsayhuaman was a fortress, built for defense. The zigzag walls would trap and confuse invading forces. Its towers served as lookouts. Its high vantage point gave the Inca a military edge. But others say that's too simple, too convenient. Because the scale, the precision, and the astronomical alignments point to something greater. A spiritual center, a temple to the sun, a place where heaven and earth met, where the stars above were mirrored by the stones below. Some alignments seem to match solstices, others point toward eclipses, and the open plazas could have hosted great festivals, rituals to connect with the divine. But here's where things get even stranger. Pottery shards found at the site predate the Inca by centuries. A culture called the Kilk may have built the first version of Sacsayhuaman in the 10th century, or maybe even earlier. So what if the Inca didn't build it? What if they inherited it, restored it, copied it? Or what if they only understood a piece of it? This would explain why only 40% of the original site remains today. During the Spanish conquest in 1536, the Spanish dismantled much of the complex, using the stones to build churches and colonial homes in Cusco. Only the largest blocks, too massive to move, remain. Silent witnesses, unbreakable relics, guarding secrets no conqueror could take. And now, Sacsayhuaman stands as both a ruin and a monument, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a tourist attraction, and a question, not just of how it was built, but why. Was it a fortress, a temple, a cosmic map, a message, or something else entirely, a trace of a vanished civilization whose memory has been erased by time? The longer we stare at those walls, the more they seem to stare back, not answering, just asking, what did they know that we have forgotten? And what are we still too afraid to rediscover? Because maybe the greatest mystery isn't the stones. It's our refusal to believe they could be more than we were ever taught. Between the 9th and 11th centuries, as Viking ships carved their way through stormy seas and fear swept across Europe, a new kind of weapon emerged. A sword, unlike anything seen before. Its blade was flawless, stronger, sharper, and centuries ahead of its time. Etched into the metal was a single word, plus Ulfberht plus T, a name that would become legend. But also a mystery, because the Ulfberht sword wasn't just a tool of war, it was a technological enigma, a riddle in steel. Most medieval swords were crude by comparison, made of impure iron, brittle and blunt after a few strikes. But the Ulfberht, it was forged from crucible steel, a metal so pure, so advanced, that it wouldn't appear in Europe again until the Industrial Revolution, 800 years later. To make it, the forge would have needed to reach 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and that simply wasn't possible in Viking-era Europe, not with the tools they had, not with the knowledge we think they possessed. So how did they do it? Some researchers believe the Vikings may have traded for raw steel along the Silk Road, acquiring small amounts of Wootz steel from India or Persia. But that only deepens the mystery, because Wootz steel was rare, difficult to transport, and required exacting technique to forge properly. The Vikings were feared warriors, but were they master metallurgists? And if they learned how to make crucible steel, why did the knowledge vanish? Why did it not spread? Why were there only about 170 authentic Ulfberhts ever discovered? And even stranger, why were there so many forgeries? Archaeologists have found dozens of imitation blades stamped with the same name, but the fakes are brittle, poorly made, trying and failing to match the original. It was as if the name Ulfberht became a brand, a myth, something so powerful it was worth copying, even if the copy couldn't live up to the legend. But what was Ulfberht? Some think it was the name of a master smith. Others believe it referred to a Frankish workshop, maybe even a Christian monastery operating in secret. Yes, a monastery, because one Ulfberht blade found in Germany was engraved with Latin words, in nomen Domini, in the name of the Lord. So were monks forging weapons for their pagan enemies? Or were these swords being smuggled into Norse lands in defiance of Frankish law? The export of weapons to the Vikings was strictly forbidden, yet Ulfberht blades have been found buried with Viking chieftains from Norway to Russia, in warrior graves, in riverbeds, in sacred bogs thrown as offerings. Clearly, these swords were more than tools. They were symbols of power, of prestige, of divine favor. Their design was perfect, balanced, effortless in combat. Their value today would be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Only the elite could wield them, and then they vanished. By the 11th century, the Ulfberht name disappeared, crucible steel was forgotten. The knowledge faded into dust. How? Why? Some say trade routes collapsed. Others believe the technique was lost as smiths died without passing on their secrets. But perhaps the truth is even stranger. Perhaps these swords were never meant to be mass-produced. Perhaps they were gifts from a knowledge stream we no longer access. Some theorists believe the Ulfberht sword is proof of a global network long before Columbus, a link between ancient Europe, Central Asia, and beyond. Others wonder whether an even older civilization had once mastered metallurgy and left behind only whispers. Whatever the answer, the Ulfberht sword stands as proof of one thing: the past was not primitive, and sometimes it was even more advanced than we dare to imagine. In the high altitudes of the Indian Himalayas, more than 5,000 meters above sea level, lies a small, frozen lake. It is called Rupkund. To the locals, it is sacred. To scientists, it is terrifying. Because when the ice melts, it reveals something the world cannot explain. Skeletons, dozens of them, hundreds, scattered along the shoreline, submerged beneath the water, some still with hair, some still wearing clothes. They were first discovered in 1942 by a British forest ranger. The world was at war, but what he found had nothing to do with modern conflict. The bones were ancient, too old to belong to any army. No one knew who they were. No one knew why they died, but all the bodies had gathered in one place, and all of them had died violently. Their skulls were cracked, fractured from above, as if something fell from the sky. Local legend tells of a royal procession that angered the mountain goddess Nanda Devi. In her fury, she hurled iron stones from the heavens. She killed them all. For decades, this was just a myth, until scientists considered it might be true. In the 1950s, researchers proposed that the group was killed by a hailstorm. Not a normal storm, a deadly rain of ice, hailstones the size of cricket balls, falling with brutal force, striking without warning. Carbon dating later confirmed that many of the skeletons dated back to the 9th century. It seemed the mystery had an answer. But in 2019, everything changed. A study of DNA revealed something no one expected. The skeletons came from different time periods and different continents. One group was South Asian. Another was from the Eastern Mediterranean. A third person had Southeast Asian ancestry. They were not related. They did not eat the same food. And they did not die at the same time. So why were their bones all found in the same lake? And why would a group of Mediterranean travelers climb into the Himalayas around the year 1800? There are no records of any such expedition. There is no known reason for them to be there. Some believe they were explorers. Others think they were lost pilgrims. But no theory explains the full picture. Rupkund Lake lies along a sacred pilgrimage route. Every 12 years, devotees walk the Nanda Devi Raj Jat in honor of the goddess. Perhaps the ancient South Asians were among them, but the Mediterranean group remains a mystery. There are no signs of battle, no signs of disease, no weapons, no graves, only skeletons, scattered like forgotten memories, preserved by ice, untouched by time. Some scientists suggest the bodies were moved by avalanches or landslides. But that does not explain why people from such distant regions all ended up here. Some wonder if Rupkund was once the site of ritual sacrifice. Others believe it is a gateway between worlds, a place where the living meet the divine. But there is no proof, only questions. Excavations are difficult. The lake is frozen most of the year, and even experienced archaeologists have had to turn back. The mountain does not give up its secrets easily. Today the skeletons remain, silent, still, waiting. Perhaps they came seeking something sacred, perhaps they were simply lost, or perhaps this place called them, over centuries, across continents, again and again, to the same place, to the same fate. Rupkund forces us to look at history not as a straight line, but as a pattern, a mystery written in bone, one that whispers, the past is never truly gone. It waits for us in the most unlikely places, beneath the ice, above the clouds, and sometimes in the silence between what we know and what we fear to ask. Beneath the golden sands of Egypt lies a secret, a structure so strange, so ancient, so out of place, that it challenges everything we thought we knew about the land of the pharaohs. It is called the Osirion, and it is not like the other temples. It does not rise proudly into the sun. It sinks downward into the earth, hidden, silent, forgotten. It was discovered in 1902 by archaeologists digging behind the temple of Seti I at Abydos. They thought they were excavating a tomb, but what they found was something far older, something far deeper. The Osirion is carved from massive blocks of red granite. Each stone weighs dozens of tons. The central hall is surrounded by a moat. 2 rows of towering pillars once supported a colossal roof, now collapsed. In the center stands a stone island, as if it were rising from the waters of some primordial ocean. There are no inscriptions, no hieroglyphs, no names, no prayers. And in ancient Egypt, that silence is deafening because everything was written, everything had a name. But here there is only stone, stone cut with perfect precision, fitted without mortar, without error, without explanation. Mainstream Egyptology claims it was built during the reign of Seti I, around the 13th century BCE. But the style is wrong, too raw, too heavy, too ancient. The granite blocks come from quarries 200 kilometers away. No ramps have been found, no tool marks, and the Osirion sits deeper than the foundations of Seti's temple, as if it was already there when Seti arrived. Some believe it dates back to the pre-dynastic period, before the pyramids, before the pharaohs, before history. Others believe it predates the Great Flood, a structure built before memory itself. But by whom? And why was it a temple? A tomb? A machine? A map? Many scholars suggest it was dedicated to Osiris, god of death and rebirth. The central island may represent the mythical mound that rose from the waters at the beginning of creation. The moat may symbolize the cosmic waters of chaos, but that is only theory because no text confirms it. The site was sealed, buried, lost, until the 20th century, and even now much of it remains underwater. Groundwater constantly floods the Osirion. No matter how much is pumped, it always returns. Some say this is symbolic, others say it's a clue. Recent research suggests the Osirion is connected to an ancient canal system. that it once tapped into an underground aquifer. But how did the builders know it was there? How did they calculate the hydrology? Why build downward into the darkness? Why in secret? Some theories go further. They say the Osirion is not Egyptian at all, that it belongs to a lost global civilization, a civilization that understood energy, resonance, water, stone, one that left only fragments behind, like Sacsayhuaman in Peru, or Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, or the Hypogeum in Malta, structures that should not exist, but do. The Osirion is one of them, and no one knows its true age, its true purpose, or why it was hidden. Some believe Seti built his temple on top of it unknowingly. Others believe he knew exactly what he was doing, that the Osirion was sacred, dangerous, and had to be sealed. Today, visitors are not allowed inside. You can only view it from above, like a message in a bottle, seen, but unreachable. And that's what makes it more powerful, because the Osirion reminds us that not everything in Egypt has been explained, that not all the gods have told their stories, and not all the doors have been opened. Maybe the Osirion was never meant to be found, or maybe it was meant to be found now, in our time, when we have forgotten who we were, so we can remember what we might become. Between India and Sri Lanka lies a stretch of ocean no more than a few meters deep. From the sky, something strange becomes visible, a line of stones, curved, unbroken, as if a road once ran across the sea. It is called Ram Setu, also known as Adam's Bridge, and it might be one of the most mysterious structures on Earth. According to Hindu legend, it was built by a god thousands of years ago. In the ancient epic Ramayana, Lord Rama built a bridge of floating stones to rescue his wife from the demon king Ravana. He was helped by an army of monkeys and a master builder named Nala. The stones were said to carry Rama's name, and because of that they did not sink. A miracle, a metaphor, or something more. Centuries passed, the legend lived on. Then, in modern times, satellites photographed the region. What they found shocked everyone. A chain of limestone shoals, stretching 48 kilometers, exactly where the story said it would be. And suddenly the question became real. Is Ram Setu a myth, or is it a memory? Geologists say the formation is natural, a leftover from the last ice age. When sea levels were lower, people may have walked across it. But new evidence complicates the story. The rocks on the surface are estimated to be 7,000 years old, but the sand beneath them is only 4,000. That doesn't make sense. Older stones sitting on younger ground. It's like the bridge was built from the top down, as if someone placed the stones there, by design. And yet no tools have ever been found, no ruins, no clear signs of construction. But the mystery doesn't stop there. Some of the stones are pumice, a volcanic rock that can float, just like the ones described in the Ramayana. Coincidence or confirmation? Religious records from the Temple of Rameswaram claim that Ram Setu was walkable until 1480. Then, a massive storm came. The water rose, and the bridge disappeared. Some historians believe it was once a migration route, a land bridge. Others think it was the remnant of an ancient port system or a sacred causeway. But what if it's more than that? What if Ram Setu is both myth and fact, a legend based on something real, a memory passed down across generations until it became scripture? In 2005, controversy erupted when a government project threatened to cut through the bridge to make a shipping canal. Hindu groups protested. Environmentalists joined them. The case reached India's Supreme Court. The archaeological agency stated that there was no historical evidence Ram Setu was man-made, but public pressure won. The project was suspended, and the bridge remained untouched, still lying silently beneath the waves, still daring us to question. What do we really know about our ancient past? Can faith preserve memory when science forgets? Is Ram Setu just rock and sand? Or is it a message, a story left behind in stone, a path that once connected two lands, and maybe two worlds? Today, Ram Setu remains a symbol of faith, of mystery, of the thin line between gods and men. It forces us to look at the ocean and ask, what if the legends are real? What if they always were? And what else lies beneath the water still waiting to rise? On the windswept coastline of Brittany, France, thousands of ancient stones rise from the earth. They stand in rows, in silence, as if frozen in mid-March. This is Carnac, one of the most mysterious megalithic sites on the planet. Over 3,000 granite stones stretch across the fields. Some stand alone. Others are aligned in perfect order. Lines, grids, patterns, stretching nearly 4 kilometers, and no one knows why. The stones vary in size, some small as a man, others towering over 20 meters high, weighing hundreds of tons. They were raised over 6,000 years ago, long before the Egyptian pyramids, long before Stonehenge, by people with no metal tools, no wheels, no writing, just willpower and a purpose now lost to time. Who were these people, and how did they move such massive stones? No one knows. Even more baffling is the precision. The stones of Carnac are not random. They follow lines. They shrink in size from west to east, as if guiding the eye towards something sacred or something forgotten. Many believe Carnac was an ancient observatory, that the stones mark solstices, eclipses, movements of the sun and stars. Others think it was a burial site, a place to honor the dead. Some see it as a pilgrimage route or a calendar carved into the land. There are even theories that the stones were early seismic sensors built to detect earthquakes. But no theory has ever explained it all, and no records remain. The builders left no writing, no drawings, no myths, only stone. The earliest archaeological finds at Carnac include jade axes from the Alps and jewelry from Spain, proof of ancient trade routes, and a sophisticated society. A society that could organize thousands of people to move and raise hundreds of stones using only their hands. But why? What was so important? What were they trying to mark, or remember, or leave behind? Some stones once had carvings, symbols, horns, human shapes, but most have faded, eroded by centuries of wind and rain, and worse, by people. In the 1800s, many stones were removed, crushed to build roads, used to construct lighthouses, pieces of the mystery destroyed forever. Even today, the site is not fully protected. In 2023, Nearly 40 stones at Montauban were bulldozed to build a supermarket. Archaeologists were outraged, but the damage was done. And with each stone lost, the story becomes harder to read. Carnac forces us to ask an unsettling question. If our ancestors could build something this massive without machines, what else did they know? What else did they do that we've forgotten? Some believe Carnac is the remnant of a lost civilization, one that understood the stars, the earth, the balance between life and death. Others believe it is a spiritual monument, a map of the invisible, a bridge between this world and the next. Whatever it is, it endures through storms, through silence, through time. The stones of Carnac still stand, still watching, still waiting, not for us to understand them, but to wonder again, as we once did, when we knew less, but perhaps saw more. In southern Iraq, where the first cities of humanity once rose from the mud, a strange set of artifacts was unearthed. Not statues of kings, not idols of gods, but something else. Something not entirely human. They are called the Ubaid figurines, and they are among the most disturbing relics ever found in Mesopotamia. Small, made of clay, but impossible to ignore. They stand no taller than 30 centimeters, but their faces are unforgettable. Elongated heads, slanted eyes, narrow pointed chins. Their skin, if it can be called that, resembles scales. They look like reptiles, like lizards, or something beyond that. They were first discovered at the Ubaid archaeological site, a settlement that predates Sumer. Long before writing, long before empires, around 7,000 years ago, the people of Ubaid built homes, farmed, traded, created order, but they also created these figurines, and no one knows why. Some were buried beneath floors, others placed in graves. Some hold staffs, others cradle infants. They seem ritualistic, intentional, deliberate. But their appearance does not match any known style from the region. Not Sumerian, not Akkadian, not Babylonian. These were something else entirely. Some researchers believe they represent deities, maybe fertility goddesses, or ancestral spirits. But then why the lizard-like faces? Why the wide, staring eyes? Why the long fingers curled around rods and babies? There are no written myths from the Ubaid culture, no texts to explain what they believed. Only these figurines, watching, silent. Some are painted with traces of red or black, perhaps ceremonial, perhaps symbolic, or perhaps a warning. Mainstream archaeology dismisses the more extreme theories, but the questions remain. Why did no neighboring culture ever produce similar figures? Why do these statues vanish completely after the Ubaid period? What happened? Some theorists suggest they were representations of extraterrestrial beings, an intelligent species that once visited or lived among early humans. They point to the serpent gods of later Sumerian myth, to the Anunnaki, to tales of sky beings and hybrid rulers. But without evidence, these remain speculation. Still, the unease is real, because the figurines are too detailed, too purposeful. They don't look like fantasies, they look like portraits. And then there's what happened later. After the Ubaid culture faded, the reptilian figures disappeared. No transition, no evolution, just gone. Many were found shattered. Some say it was accidental. Others believe they were deliberately broken, erased, as if someone wanted them forgotten, as if someone was afraid. Today, only a few remain. Most are held in museums. Some have vanished completely, lost to war, to looters, or to something else. New digs in Iraq continue, but no new reptilian figures have surfaced. The trail has gone cold, or maybe it was never meant to go further. Maybe the Ubaid people saw something, and they remembered it in clay. Maybe these were not myths, but memories. And the real mystery is not who they were, it's why they stopped, and what it cost them. Because sometimes silence is not absence, it is survival. And the figurines, they're still here, still staring, still waiting to be understood or feared. In the high plains of Bolivia, beneath the towering shadow of Mount Sajama, something ancient stretches across the land. Not ruins, not symbols, but lines. Thousands of them cut into the earth, straight, precise, endless. They are called the Sajama lines, and they are among the largest and most mysterious geoglyphs on the planet. They do not form animals like the Nazca lines of Peru. They do not tell a story, at least, not one we can read. They are just lines, etched into the surface of the Altiplano, over 16,000 kilometers in total length. Some run for dozens of kilometers without a single curve. They cross hills, rivers, valleys, and they never bend. Not once, not ever. But here's the question. How did ancient people create lines this perfect without drones, satellites, or even writing? Who were they? And why did they carve these pathways into one of the harshest landscapes on Earth? Local tradition says they were made by the Aymara people over 3,000 years ago, using only stone tools and their own hands. They removed the dark, oxidized topsoil, scraped it away to reveal the lighter soil beneath. That's all. No machines, no survey equipment, just eyes, feet, and vision. But vision of what? Some archaeologists believe the Sajama lines were pilgrimage routes, sacred paths connecting shrines, burial towers, and settlements. Others suggest they marked territory or guided travelers to water sources. But none of those explanations account for the scale or the precision, because this is not a random network. It is a web, a geometric grid of straight lines that seem to defy logic. It covers more than 22,000 square kilometers, and there are no curved paths, no decorative symbols, no breaks, only lines intersecting, crossing, converging, over and over again. Some researchers have tried to map them all using satellite imagery, but the full extent of the Sajama lines may never be known. Time has eroded many of them. Others have been destroyed by roads, farms, and modern construction. What remains is still breathtaking, a map too big to read from the ground, a design that only makes sense from the sky. And that raises another question. Who were these lines meant for? Because the people who made them would never have seen them from above, unless they imagined someone else would, unless they believed the gods or something else watched from the sky. Unlike the Nazca, the Sajama people left no writings, no clues, just the lines, and the silence between them. Some have speculated they were part of a global system of energy lines, ley lines, earth grids, vibrational paths that connect sacred sites around the world. Others think they are the remnants of a forgotten science or a forgotten mind, not about what was drawn, but about how it was done. Because in a world without rulers or compasses, perfect straightness is not just impressive, it's impossible, unless it was. Unless these people knew something we don't, or remembered something we've lost. Today, the Sajama lines are slowly fading, eaten by erosion, trampled by progress, but their mystery remains, not in what they depict, but in their existence. They are proof that the past had vision, and discipline, and purpose, even when we no longer see it. They are a message etched into the land, not for the eyes, but for the soul, straight, simple, silent, and still asking why. On the small island of Malta, beneath the bustling town of Paula, there is another world, hidden, carved into the limestone, and older than memory. It is called the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, and it may be the oldest underground temple on Earth, discovered by accident in 1902 when construction workers cracked through its ceiling. They were laying the foundation for a house, but what they found was a doorway into the past, a labyrinth 3 levels deep, hand-carved, no machines, no light, no escape from silence. The top level holds small chambers, tombs, and burial niches. The middle level is ceremonial, curved walls, spiral patterns in red ochre. Rooms with names that whisper of mystery. The oracle room, the holy of holies. The lower level is the deepest and the darkest. It contains collective burial vaults and the bones of over 7,000 people. But even that is not the strangest part. It's the sound, because in the oracle room something happens. A man's voice, spoken in a low tone, begins to resonate. The sound echoes through the entire structure. It vibrates. It shivers. It surrounds you. Researchers found that the chamber is tuned to exactly 110 hertz. That same frequency has been linked to altered states of consciousness, to deep meditative trance, to sacred resonance. And it was designed deliberately, thousands of years before acoustic science even existed. How did they know? And why? Was the Hypogeum a temple, a tomb, a healing chamber, or something beyond even that? Some believe it was a sanctuary. Others say it was a womb, a gateway between life and death, where the living came to speak with the ancestors, or the gods, or something else entirely. And then there are the skulls, unusually elongated, stretched, alien in shape, once kept in Malta's national museums, now gone, removed, disappeared after 1985. Some say they were lost in war. Others whisper of cover-ups and secrets better left buried. Because the deeper you go in the Hypogeum, the less it feels like architecture, and the more it feels like intention. Every curve, every stone, every echo is deliberate. Today, most of the Hypogeum is closed to the public. Only 80 visitors are allowed per day. Tickets sell out months in advance. Even then, you are only allowed into certain sections. The deeper rooms remain sealed, too fragile, too sacred, or maybe too dangerous. Because in this place, you do not just see the past, you feel it, you hear it, in the hum of the walls, in the breath of stone. It is said that some visitors hear voices, others feel watched, some leave trembling, they cannot explain why. And maybe they are not meant to, because the Hypogeum is not a museum, it is not a ruin, It is alive, and it remembers things we do not, things we may never know. But one question echoes louder than all others. Who built this, and how? Before the wheel, before the pyramid, before even writing, a people lived here, buried their dead, whispered into the stone and walked away, leaving only the silence behind. A silence that still answers, even now, in the dark. And city with pyramidal mounds, walls and ceremonial plazas. It flourished around 1000 AD and then it vanished. What if the builders of Aztlan also built beneath Rock Lake? What if these were water temples? Structures deliberately submerged to preserve their sacredness. Others believe the pyramids are much older, predating Aztlan by millennia, built by a forgotten civilization that existed before the last ice age, when water levels were lower and the landscape was entirely different. Geologists dismiss this. They say the pyramids are just glacial formations, natural piles of rock, but their alignment suggests otherwise. So do the repeated eyewitness accounts. Some even claim to have touched the stones, described feeling corners, edges, as if the structure was once part of something vast and deliberate. Still, the official story remains silence. No large-scale dives, no major studies, just the occasional whisper, and a lake that keeps its secret well. Because the waters of Rock Lake are deceptive, calm on the surface, but hiding something deep, something old, and perhaps something sacred. What makes this mystery even more haunting is that no one seems to care. While the world obsesses over Egypt and Peru, few look to Wisconsin. Few ask, few remember, but those who do know that beneath this lake lies a riddle, not carved in desert stone, but wrapped in freshwater stillness, waiting, not to be found, but to be believed. Maybe the most terrifying truth is not that these mysteries exist, but that we've learned to live without asking about them.